Hello everyone, welcome back to Ages Nagash, which is a channel dedicated to Age of Sigmar. In this video we're going to have a look a bit more at death lore, and in particular the missing souls that rightly belong to Nagash. We start with souls are priceless resources which can be used to power all manner of arcane rituals and creations. None lay so firm claim upon the spirits of the deceased as Nagash, Lord of the Underworlds. The first traitor we're going to talk about is Sigmar the Soul Thief. Nagash and the God King Sigmar share a tempestuous history. At times they have been reluctant allies, more often they have been hated foes, each possessing an admiration, will and dominance that inevitably drew them to battle one another. Yet it was a single desperate act upon Sigmar's part that rendered him a betrayer in the mind of the great necromancer, and set these two mythical figures upon an inevitable path to all-out war. As the age of chaos drowned the mortal realms in bloodshed and terror, the God King withdrew to the realm of heavens, abandoning his scattered people so that the dream of culture and civilization might live on. Deep within the palace of Sigmaron, seat of his power in the holy city of Azerheim, Sigmar placed and plotted. He had sworn to return to save his tormented flock, but to do so he would need an army of unbreakable will, warriors who could stand unbowed and unafraid before the full horror of chaos. Gathered his allies to his side, Sigmar began his greatest work, the Stormcast Eternals. Now, I'm sorry guys, I couldn't actually manage to find a artwork picture of the Stormcast Eternals, not even a Liberator, unfortunately. I googled it and I just couldn't find anything, so I'm going to have to show you one of my own figures of a Liberator, just so you get the idea of what Stormcasts are like. Anyway, so back to the story. The Stormcast Eternals, Sigmar's immortal champions, were blessed with superhuman strength and durability. They were clad in armour fashioned within the vast celestial forges, and bore weapons touched by the cleansing power of Sigmar's tempest. Yet it was the blazing soul of these warriors that granted them true strength. Each Stormcast was once a mortal hero of the realms who fell in battle against the foul worshippers of the Chaos Gods. As they stood upon the threshold of death, their spirit essence was claimed by the celestial storm, their bodies disappearing in a flash of lightning as they were drawn back to Sigmaron, the God King's palace in Azir. There they would be reforged and born again as the greatest warriors of order that the realms had ever seen. And if you look at the photo on the screen now, you can just see how great they are. Nagash mirrored in the centuries-long burrow wars against the hordes of chaos invaders pouring into Shaish, felt a stream of precious souls slipping from his grasp. This could not be contended as the father of necromancy and the unchallenged master of death. Nagash claimed the spirits of the deceased as his property alone. It was this very soul matter that granted the great necromancer his formidable powers, and to steal it challenged the rigid hierarchy of the underworlds in an unforgiving, reckless manner. Nagash traced the stream of missing souls to the heavens and knew that Sigmar had taken what was rightfully his. His fury was absolute, a chilling rage that transformed the underworld of Stygia into a frozen wasteland. However, there was nothing that could be done to repay this unforgiving slight while the armies of the Dark Gods massed before the gates of Nagash Azir. As always, the great necromancer would bide his time and wait for his enemies to reveal their weaknesses. In due course, the God King's brazen theft would be avenged, and Sigmar would learn what it truly meant to cross the god of death. Good example of what Nagash's revenge looks like upon this matter of missing souls is of course the mirrored city of Shadespire, which I'm sure you guys know from the spin-off board game Shadespire, and then also I think that's where the campaign for Age of Sigmar skirmish is set, so there's already quite a bit of lore out there, and this just tells us a bit more about it. So, the mirrored city of Shadespire. Nothing amplifies the length to which the great necromancer will go to punish those responsible for denying him his tithe of souls more than the fate of the great city of Shadespire. Once a majestic centre of science and innovation, Shadespire became famous throughout Shaiish and beyond for the production of shade glass, pure gravesand fortified and processed into crystal. This wondrous material possessed the ability to capture a being's soul upon death, allowing one to exist forever in a mirror realm, shorn of their physical form. In this way, beloved family members could converse with their deceased loved ones, and the city ruling hierarchy, great mages, inventors, and statesmen could impart the breadth of their knowledge to the next generation. Nagash looked upon the inhabitants of Shadespire, whom he saw as supremely arrogant, and was filled with cold fury. These mortal creatures dared to disrupt the sacred order of Shaiish and deny the God King his due. Such defiance required a fitting punishment. The great necromancer would show the people of Shadespire the true horror of a world without death. Their fate would serve as a warning to all mortals, reminding them of their true place. Working a spell of terrible power, Nagash corrupted the magic of the shade glass and spirited Shadespire away into a dark, twisted twilight subrealm. We fractured between the realms of light and shadow. No soul would ever escape the mirrored city of Shadespire, for the very shade glass that had offered eternal life now kept the spirits of the dead imprisoned for all time. Unable to pass on, the inhabitants of the city watched their flesh wither and rot away over the centuries, losing their minds to insanity and hopelessness. The ruins of old Shadespire still stand, a gloom-shrouded testament to the foolishness of defying the god of death. Tales are told across the mortal realms of roving bands of adventurers who have strayed too far within the borders of this cursed place, never to be seen again. We then move on to talk about souls of the elf kind, which are of course elves, but Games Workshop can't copyright elf obviously, so they just put A in front of it. But for all intents and purposes for this video, I'll be referring to elves as elves. So, it was not only the God King that had raised Nagash's ear with his brazen theft. The god of death greatly converted elf souls, for the spirits of these immortal beings blazed with potential. Such powerful spirit matter could be shaped and twisted into wonderfully macabre creations, fused with bone and amethyst magic to create weapons of war, structures of radiant necromantic energy, or 1,000 other artifacts. Yet so few of these priceless souls made their way to Shaiish, for other hungering eyes were drawn to them. As the world that was tore itself apart, countless mortal lives were snuffed out in an instant. Tormented lost souls drifted through the ether and were claimed by dark powers that reached forth hungrily from the realm of chaos. No deity indulged themselves so thoroughly as Slaanesh, the god of excess. The Dark Prince devoured so many elf souls that he grew bloated and sluggish and was forced to take shelter lest his fellow gods took advantage of his weakened state to gain ground in the great game of dominance and intrigue that defined their every action. It was Malarian and Tyrion, the gods of elfkind, who discovered Slaanesh and lured him into captivity. Desperate to restore their alien race, they began to extract as many souls as they could from the helpless chaos god. They performed this task in secret, in a distant subrealm, hidden from praying eyes. Yet Nagash, connected to all things of the spirit realm, could feel a great bounty slipping from his fingers, torn away by some unknown entity. His agents ventured far and wide in search of those responsible, yet Malarian and Tyrion had covered their tracks expertly. Perhaps the culprits may have remained entirely unknown were it not for the subterfuge of Merathi, mother of Malarian and queen of the Shadow Realm. Merathi portrayed to aid her son and Tyrion in their endeavours, all the while secretly stealing a surplus bounty of elf spirits away to Ogul for her own sinister purposes. Malarian and Tyrion carefully planned had not accounted for Merathi's characteristic magic and masked behind spells of obfuscation and misdirection. Though Nagash still could not pinpoint Sanesh's exact location, this torrent of stolen souls drew his eyes to the Elven god Pantheon. It was not long before further acts of theft caught the great necromancer's attention. Across the mortal realms, trickles of spirits matter vanished into nothing as it broken apart upon the wind. Something was preying upon mortal kind, souls and flesh, risking them away to an unknown realm. Great fleets of merchant ships or entire townships would disappear overnight. Not a fragment of their spectral essence remained. All that could be found were a few soulless bodies left inert and comatose, unable to wake. This was no sudden surge in absent spirit matter, but a slow and steady disappearance. Even to Nagash it was subtle and barely noticeable, and that disturbed the great necromancer most of all. Arcan the Black and his legion of sacrament were dispatched to discover the truth of these disappearances, but they found no sign of those responsible. Clearly this is talking about the Indoreth Deep King, I think that's how it's pronounced, but essentially the Deep King are the Sea Elves that will be coming out soon. We know this because Games Workshop has released teasers such as the photo on the screen at the moment that you can see, and also bigger teasers like the picture of what the front of the battle tome looks like. And yeah, it all looks like it's coming out very soon, you know, depending on your interpretation of very. I mean, probably within a month we'll see, you know, the first sign of releases for them, hopefully, if not a pre-order date. So we've got that for them, and clearly that is portrayed in the story here as they are, you know, told how they make you know, a whole fleet of merchant ships disappear, and then in the photo, like I say, that's shown on the screen now, it says how people are disappearing from a village, and it's all very mysterious and sort of connected to mist and water in the sea. So this is obviously clearly what they're trying to show us. I mean, this book is a little bit it's not the most updated information about, you know, the Deep King, because we've had the Daughters of Cain book that's came out that had more information about them in it. Sidetracked a little bit there, but I thought it would be quite nice just to talk a little bit about the upcoming release. Moving back to death, so vengeance at hand. Nagash has weathered these Merid betrayals with great resistance, never indulging his simmering resentment. Now, as he sits once more upon the throne of the Gashasar, the great necromancer puts in motion his plans for vengeance against the soul thief Sigmar, the treacherous elf gods, and the dark powers of chaos, who so shamelessly despoiled his rightful domain. The great necromancer is no longer content to dwell within Shaish, waiting and watching. He will bring his war to every corner of the mortal realms. The Mortarchs have been unleashed in all their dark splendour, abandoning the cautious optimism they favoured during the height of the Realmgate Wars in favour of total war. None are safe from their wrath. Queen Neferata's blood cults and vampire covens infest every stratum of Sigmarite society, feasting upon the lifeblood of the God King's proud nude cities. The Azir-born Gestrous dynasty in far-flung Avelgard, the Pale Prince of Hammerhall, the sanguinary choir of Exilus. The Mortarch of Blood's vampiric agents seem to have infiltrated everywhere. These intriguers, assassins of the Legion of Blood, they employ their dark charmism to seduce and manipulate key civic and military figures, gathering influence slowly, and when the enemy is at their most vulnerable, only then do Neferata's armies ride forth to feast upon their helpless prey. Spates of victorious killing, bloody ambushes, and disappearance of entire mortal armies mark the work of Manfred von Carstein's Legion of Night. The vampire's forces march deep into Sigmarite lands, burning and slaying at will. Bat-winged horrors strike from glooming night skies, snatching away helpless victims and sowing terror in the survivors. Skeletal warriors march and slay according to their master's cruel design, butchering entire frontier towns and fortified outposts, stringing the mangled corpses of their victims up on the walls of conquered townships for all to see. Clusia burns. Volksgard is but a shadow-haunted skeleton of its former might. The twin fortresses of the Crowfeast peaks are strewn with the flayed bodies of their offenders. Von Carstein's rampage of terror has drawn out many armies of Stormcast Eternals, but so far the vampire has remained elusive. Meanwhile, the Sigmar worshippers' outraged crusades of vengeance have left several major cities worrying under strength. Ever loyal to the great necromancer, Arcan the Black dispatches his black disciples on missions of the utmost importance, even as he oversees the construction of further invented pyramids above Nagash's. The legions of sacrament seek forbidden knowledge with a great single mindlessness than ever before, venturing into enemy-controlled lands to loot ancient tombs, hidden library cities, and arcane repositories. Armies pour into Olgu, the realm of shadows, where Nagash suspects the elf gods have hidden the captives for Nesh. The dangers of this shrouded realm are myriad and horrifying, and many of these expeditions disappear without trace. Yet there are always more corpses to raise and more death mages willing to risk all for a taste of true power. And so Arcan continues to search for those who dared steal from his master. With all his pieces arranged upon the board, Nagash prepares to launch his war against the living, his grand plan for conquest of the mortal realms. It is a gambit both astonishingly intricate and devilishly cunning, built upon plots that Nagash has woven over the course of thousands of years. Such an endeavour could only come from the mind of a being as patient and as cold-blooded as the great necromancer. The true horror of this scheme is yet to be fully understood by his enemies, but even they can feel the power of Shaish rising to a shuddering ascendance. Across the realms, barrow mounds echo the sound of marching boots, and withered corpses stir within dusty tombs. Witch-like auroras herald the coming of spirit storms that tear the souls from the living and bring the dead clawing up from the soil in their multitudes. Terrified mortals cower within their cities, praying to their gods that strong walls and steady spears will protect them. And ancient forest spirits stir, awakened by the tread of deathless legions. Warriors of chaos gaze from the battlements of their dreadholds, eagerly anticipating the prospect of slaughter and suffering. Death waxes ascendant. The time is coming for a final reckoning, an era of vengeance that will remind all traitors and pretenders who truly commands the spirits of the fallen. And that is the information of the missing souls. So it's quite good. It tells us basically Nagash's hit list for all the traitors and the people who have betrayed him. On the top of that list, it does look like it's Sigmar the barbarian, Sigmar the thief, and the traitor. And then it's not just talking about Sigmar, we've also got things talking about how the mirrored city of Shadespire is the perfect example of just how Nagash can inflict his vengeance onto those who have betrayed him, which I'm sure you guys know from, like I said, that board game that's out there, which is quite fun, the Shadespire game, and then also the Skirmish game. If you guys have played that, it's just like a warband version of Age of Sigmar. And then it moves on to talk about the elves. It mentions quite a few of them. It mentions, obviously Tyrion and Malerion, and then obviously Marafi's got her own thing going on, and then all that stems from how Slaanesh swallowed all those souls when the world that was destroyed. So it talks about quite a few different characters. Like I say, it's quite nice to have some of the Elven gods in there. I mean, because this is new information from the Battle Tome, and the Legions of the Nagash Battle Tome, of course, came out before the Daughters of Cain one that's now being released. So before the Daughters of Cain Battle Tome came out, we didn't really know any information at all, much about the the elves in general, really, and especially Slaanesh. So it's nice to have some information here about Slaanesh, and then that about the elves as well. And then we get a bit of an insight of the inclusive Deep King. I can't remember the first name they are, so I'm just going to call them the Deep King, which do sound quite interesting. Like I say, essentially, sea elves that live under the sea. However, it'll be quite interesting to see how they are portrayed and how they're done, because personally I see it as quite a it's not really going to be my cup of tea, I don't think, because I mean a lot of people talk about Battletome Fishermen and all that sort of thing, which does sound funny, but I don't think it's going to be my cup of tea, that sort of thing. So it will depend how it's done. If it's done very Greek-like, and the look and style of the models, I'll quite like that. How they've done that sort of like Daughters of Cain with like the Medusae and the sort of, I think they're called canaries, but essentially harpy models, which I do quite like, and I do like Greek mythology, so do like the connection there. So it'd be interesting to see if these Deep King have got a bit of a Greek theme through them, particularly Atlantis and stuff like that. So that would be interesting to see. I do also look forward to seeing what the Elven pantheon looks like, because it seems to be very much again a sort of a Olympus sort of theme, obviously from Greek mythology. So it's all lots of new things coming out, and will be like I keep repeating, interesting to see. I do hope that Def is going to get some models though, because with all these elf models coming out, I mean it's fantastic. Really happy for people who play those armies and people who really want to start those armies, because elves have not really had any models. I mean, I know they're called elves now, but I think the A is going to be silent anyway. So I'm happy for them, but I do feel like I've mentioned before, I hope Def hasn't missed its opportunity. I hope the Legions of the Nagash, the book that was fantastic, but I do hope it wasn't like that's what we're getting, and Def has had its moment, now move on, because we didn't really get any new models apart from the Knight of Shrouds and the Shadespire Serpical Guard, I think they're called, which isn't a lot of models, particularly how you can't use the Serpical Guard in the Legions of the Nagash book. Anyway, but that's enough complaining about that. And then that is the end of the video. So it was nice to hear about the missing souls, and especially nice to hear beyond just the thief Sigmar taking the souls. There are other culprits out there that need to be brought to justice, and I hope you've enjoyed it as well. And if you have, and you want to, you've got your own thoughts about, not just the missing souls, but any part of the narrative from the Legions of the Nagash or Def in general, please let me know in the comments, and we can share our thoughts and really learn from each other. And as always, I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if so, please like, subscribe and comment, as that does all really help me produce as many videos as often as I can. And until next time, remember, Nagash is all, and all is one in Nagash.